8 sleepers for your Week 10 matchup. First guy we want to talk about here is Devin Singletary. So he looked like in the fourth quarter that he maybe was taking over from Tyrone Tracy a little bit, and it was a much more even split than we saw the week that Cam Scatterbu went down. So I do think that there's an opportunity here against Chicago. It should be a decently high-scoring game, that if he's going to be playing over 50% of the snaps again, or even higher than that, we could see a pretty solid game here from Singletary, maybe get in the end zone if Jackson Dart doesn't vulture that rushing touchdown. But overall, I do think that we're going to see a little bit more Devin Singletary involvement this week than we saw last week.
I still think we're going to see Dart active at the goal line, but it's funny, last week, you're hearing a lot of waiver wire shows like, blow all your fab on Tyrone Tracy, like, this is it, empty the clip, like he's top 20 rest of season. And here we are back with Mr. Inevitable Devin Singletary, Mr. No Gloves here. So he seems to pop back into our lives every year around this time. But again, I'm kind of shocked that he had over 50% of the snaps and Tracy was down at like 44. So, and even in that game, it's like maybe you think Tracy as the pass catching back will be more involved when they're trailing. Like, he wasn't. So who knows in this one? I do think they're going to be able to move the ball against Chicago. So I think both guys are in line for double-digit touches. And, Singletary, if he gets in the end zone, could be a decent sneaky play this week.
Yeah, and that obviously hurts my heart as a Tyrone Tracy truther to see Devin Singletary have more snaps than him in this first game. I mean, that was just like, dude, why is that the case? Just give it to Tracy. So we'll see. And this is why Singletary is the sleeper too, right? I mean, Tracy is ranked ahead of him everywhere that I look. It's just something that if he's still on your wire or if you're really stuck at running back, that I think this is probably one of the better players that you can get.
Next guy up, Aaron Jones. So he gets the Baltimore Ravens this week, and Jones had 98 total yards on 11 touches before leaving the game last week with a shoulder injury. And, that's why we see his snap share only at 42%. And, the Ravens defense overall this season hasn't been good, but they are getting healthier and the team overall is trending up. But in terms of Aaron Jones, like JJ McCarthy played pretty well last week in their win against the Lions. Like he only threw the ball 25 times. And in his first two starts, weeks 1 and 2, he only threw it 21 and 22 times as well. So I think that's likely what Kevin O'Connell wants to see at this point from him. And, after the game, KOC talked about, wanting to lean into the run, et cetera, et cetera. So, Jones doesn't necessarily feel as game script dependent as, his running mate. And I think in this past week, he likely would have pushed for 15 plus touches had he not got knocked out. So I think Jones is trending up in a big way. I think you actually included him on trade targets either last week or the week prior. But again, just looking a little bit different when he's on the field versus Jordan Mason.
Yeah, and Aaron Jones is definitely the running back you want in this backfield. There was a lot of discussion on if Mason could really take over, but when Jones was out, he just didn't take advantage of the opportunity in the same way he did with San Francisco last year. So, you see Jones come back. He immediately led the backfield in his first game back and then was trending to just have a monster game in week 9 against Detroit. So definitely get Aaron Jones in your lineup. I don't know what he had to do to get ranked higher. We're looking at him as RB 33, and that seems just unbelievably low for what he's bringing to the table. Maybe it's because the touchdowns just aren't likely to come. Maybe it's because he did get banged up with a shoulder injury, and so there's a chance he sits. But overall, against Baltimore, this is definitely somebody you want to get in your lineups if he is going to go. I do think that there's shootout potential, and he obviously can have a big impact in the passing game if McCarthy does have to run up 30-plus pass attempts for the first time this year. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We're on our way to 1.5K, and we would very much appreciate the support. Next guy up is RJ Harvey. So he has been weirdly good the last 2 weeks. He still hasn't gotten the ball a lot, but he did score twice on the ground against Dallas in week 8, and then he has his best receiving game of the year with 5 catches for 50-plus yards and a touchdown in week 9 against Houston, who's actually a really good defense. So seeing him kind of do it 2 different ways the last 2 weeks makes me feel like maybe there's a little bit of an opportunity here to play him as a flex. So I definitely have more confidence in him than I have prior. And is he going to score a touchdown against the Raiders this week on 6 or 7 touches? I don't know. That's almost impossible to predict. But it does feel like he at least is showing a little bit more explosion. He's got over 50 yards back-to-back weeks, as well as the scores. So if you're stuck and you still have been holding out hope that RJ Harvey can get more and more involved as the season goes on, I do think that this is a point in the season where you can actually put him in your starting lineup.
It is funny when you look at his player card, right? He has 5 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks. But one thing I do want to point out is week 4 against Cincinnati, when they blew him out by like 25 points, he did get 14 rush attempts in that game. And that's not like necessarily saying, okay, I think he's going to take over for J.K. Dobbins. But this game on Thursday night against the Raiders, there's a chance that they go up big and they kind of ride him toward the end. Now, Denver is a weird team the first 3.5 quarters of every game, so it might be just kind of an ugly game script in the beginning, but who knows? This is an opponent that they should be able to beat up on. And at this point in the season, I still don't know what to think about RJ Harvey overall. Like, I was never really on board the Harvey train, like not necessarily whatsoever. I just didn't really understand all the hype that was getting out of control, but he's sitting at RB24 on the back of all these touchdowns. So we'll see for the rest of the season, but I think for this week, it is a good call out.
Yeah, and running back 24 is absolutely wild for somebody who has been this low volume this year. So I think that shows the state of the position and maybe the state of fantasy this year, because it's been kind of a grind this year as guys have just been disappointing left and right. So it is nice that he's been scoring touchdowns. And you said maybe this one gets to be a blowout. I just don't trust Denver to blow anybody out, so I wouldn't be relying on that necessarily. I think the Raiders, too, with Bowers back, looked like a completely different team last week. So overall, I don't know if you can count on that, but if it does happen, that just elevates Harvey's ceiling even that much.
Next up, Christian Watson. So they face Philadelphia on Monday night, and the Packers are projected to score 24 points in that game. So Christian Watson's had 4 targets in each of his last 2 games since coming back from injury, kind of making the most out of those targets, going for 143 yards on 6 catches, which we know is kind of his game. He is a deep threat. He can score on any play, and he's attached to a big arm quarterback in Jordan Love. But unfortunately, this also has to do with the fact that Tucker Kraft is going to be out. We don't know the status of Matthew Golden. Reed is still out. Wicks is injured. So we're going to see Watson probably on the field a ton. And we saw him on the field more this last week than his first week back. And I think as well, what Kraft does or has done in the run blocking department can't really be understated. So, maybe they're not able to run the ball as effectively in this game, which leads to more throws. And against Philadelphia, who should be able to put up points on Green Bay, maybe this leads to a little bit of a back and forth in a shootout. And, I mentioned it previously, but Watson's one of those guys that just needs 1 or 2 big plays to kind of make his week.
Yeah, and we saw it again last week, right? 50-yard bomb to him. And without I think, like you said, all the injuries is kind of the key here, because no Kraft and maybe Musgrave gets a little bit involved, but we've seen that movie before. Nobody is thrilled on Luke Musgrave. So, and then, Golden out, Reed still out. So, there's an opportunity here for him to maybe exceed that 4 target threshold. Maybe they take a couple more shots. Maybe he gets a little bit over the deep middle and elevates that to 6 or 7 targets. And if that's the case against Philly in a game where they're probably going to need to put up points, he could be an absolute monster this week. So I do like the Christian Watson call out. Overall, he's not going to get ranked well just because the bottom can fall out. If he doesn't catch a deep ball, it's just not going to be very many points. And that's the whole deal with Christian Watson. But if you need wide receiver help this week and you need to take a shot, there's worse players that Watson that you put in your line. Next guy up is Cedric Tillman. So I am very excited that he is going to be coming back off the bye, and I have modest hopes that he is going to step right back into the number 1 role. We saw Jerry Jeudy in week 8 not record a catch. And so I just have no faith in Jeudy anymore. And I just am really hoping that Tillman is going to be good for Gabriel, and he's going to be heavily involved right out of the gate. And this is a Jets defense now that just lost Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams. So are they even going to be able to stop anything at all? I have no idea, right? I mean, fire up Judkins too, but doesn't really qualify for this video. So the tight ends have been dominating the passing game. So that's the other thing too, is if Tillman coming back doesn't make them change how they're approaching the offense, that'll be a little bit difficult. But I think Tillman's going to step right in for Isaiah Bond in the offense, in the starting lineup. And I think that he's going to be heavily targeted in this first game back. And first game back, quote unquote, heavily targeted for somebody that's ranked this low, maybe 6, 7 targets, something like that. And they're going to try and get him going right away. for the stretch run.
Yeah, I was really hoping that the Browns were going to trade Njoku at the deadline yesterday.
Yeah.
The only reason that, maybe they didn't do it, and who knows what goes behind the scenes, like maybe they're kind of just letting Fannin learn from him throughout the whole course of the season before kind of turning over the keys next year. But again, looking at Tillman straight out of the gate, this was a guy that you and I really loved this offseason. We loved him as a sleeper. He comes out firing 8 targets week 1, 7 targets week 2 with touchdowns to go alongside that. So this is a player who has a lot of talent. Unfortunately, Dylan Gabriel doesn't have the biggest arm. So, he's someone that we had on a beat the waiver wire last week, probably be on it again this week, because I think eventually they are going to turn the keys over to Shador. He is dealing with injury right now, but he is someone that long-term has some appeal as well. And you mentioned with the Jets, like they must just be completely deflated on both sides of the ball. Like, I don't even know how they're going to suit up for this one.
Yeah, exactly. Just devastated at the deadline for sure. Like, Breece Hall posting on social media that he wants out and then that he's sad. He's happy for his guys, but it's just bittersweet, all this stuff. So
if there's any position to trade, it's your running back on an expiring contract.
Yeah, I think that they're going to try and re-sign him, but it just seems weird that they weren't able to get a third from anybody. I mean, that was their asking price, and nobody came and got him for a third. So
it's like keeping your star reliever at the deadline when your team is under 500.
Oh, exactly. No, it's still too soon. Kenley Jansen should have been out of there.
We're Angels fans here, so we know a lot about mismanagement. All right, on that note, next guy up here I wanted to talk about is Jakobi Meyers. So he's a member of a new team, and he gets the Houston Texans this week. So obviously traded the Jags, like I mentioned. BTJ is dealing with a low-grade high ankle sprain, so I don't think BTJ is going to be playing.
It's a low ankle sprain.
Low ankle sprain. Okay, I'm sorry. So either way, I'm not super confident that he's going to be playing this week. Obviously, Travis Hunter and Brenton Strange are on IR. And, all that being said, Meyers is likely going to be the best pass catcher on the field. And Jags, I believe their pass catchers lead the league in drops this year. And Meyers is a guy that didn't have a drop all of last season. And I will say with the matchup, like, I don't necessarily love this one. Like, Texans have one of the best defenses in the league, and this game could be a little bit gross. But, I had imagined in this game, Meyers is going to kind of back his way into 8 to 10 targets just because Lawrence has been averaging, 36 pass attempts per game. And, Jakobi is someone that we were kind of all in on this offseason. He's been one of the most underrated fantasy assets the previous 3 years. And we thought, new coaching regime, upgrade at starting quarterback. We'd already seen him finish as the wide receiver 23 with Brock Bowers on the field. But obviously it just didn't work out. And now he gets a fresh start with the Jags. And the vibes around Meyers, like he had requested a trade going back to the offseason, and then leading up to the deadline, he obviously wasn't shy about wanting to get moved. So, we'll see how this looks. Lawrence obviously isn't super inspiring by any means, but again, sometimes a fresh start, when you want to get out is what you need.
Yeah, and I think that there's a chance that Jakobi's just out there all the time right away. He's a veteran. He's changed teams before, and so I think that there's a little bit of experience in coming in and being able to get on the field a lot, because there is sometimes the concern that when receivers change teams that they're going to see 40-50% snaps that first week coming in, and so that does exist a little bit still. There is still that possibility, and Parker Washington is the guy again this week, but I do think Jakobi over the rest of the season, and if you have him and you've been sitting on him, he's not going to be worse than he's been either. That's the thing, right? I mean, he has been so bad his last 4 games he's played that it's honestly been astonishing to both of us. We just can't figure it out. And I think maybe it was just how bad Geno was, how bad the offense was, and how much he wanted out. I think maybe it was just a combination of everything, and that he can get going again and get right on the Jaguars over the last 8 games of the year. So I think that can start this week in Houston.
Yeah, and our buddy texted us, who loves to overanalyze everything and thinks his bench players are worth their weight in gold, was like, I don't know what to think of this trade. And we're like, dude, it can't be worse than what it's been. Like, he's already basically a cut on the Raiders, so why not at least see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing, is if he didn't get dealt, then that was going to be the conversation we were going to be having with Jakobi Meyers, which wasn't something I anticipated at the beginning of the year at all being the case, especially through 2 weeks. And then Bowers goes down, and it's like, okay, is his target volume going to increase? And it actually went down without Bowers. So I don't know. That was just such a weird situation. They were trying to get Trey Tucker to be the number one, and so he is now. So maybe maybe Jakobi can move on and be a huge part of the Jaguars offense. And something that we didn't even mention, right, is that Travis Hunter is out for the year, likely. We didn't really get a good idea of what his injury is, but we do know it's a serious injury. He's on injured reserve. And so Jakobi's kind of just going to be stepping into that role. And we saw how valuable that role could be the week before Hunter got hurt. So, I think that if he's out there all the time, that there's going to be a big opportunity for him this year.
Next guy up, Theo Johnson. He is at the Chicago Bears this week, and the over-under in this game is pushing 50, and the Bears obviously have a bottom 5 defense in pretty much every category, and they just got torched for 42 points against Cincinnati this last week. And I'm not saying that, the Giants are the powerhouse offense that the Bengals have. However, they have definitely looked really good under Dart. And, we've talked about Theo Johnson on Beat the Wire earlier this year, athletic second-year tight end who's on the field a ton. You look at his snap percentage, he's always in the 80s or 90s, and he seems to have a nose for the end zone, like 5 touchdowns already this season, not to mention Jackson Dart's playing at a really high level. And I think in this game, Dart has a little bit of extra motivation. I know I always try to make these like revenge games kind of a thing. However, he is playing against Caleb Williams, who of course transferred to USC and made, I guess, if you want to call it that, Dart end up transferring to Ole Miss. So we'll see if he has a little bit of inspired revenge in this one. But again, Theo on the field a ton. He's really targeting all of his tight ends because they're not super great in the wide receiver department right now. So again, if he gets in the end zone and sees 6 targets in this game, could back his way in a really nice week.
Yeah, and I would like this call a lot more if Theo Johnson could catch the ball. I mean, oh my gosh, did he have some bad drops over the last 3 weeks? It's like, dude.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, the ball's right in your hands. There's nobody around. Just, can you please stick it? So, obviously he's got 5 touchdowns in his last 6 games. And so that's been a great part of the offense. And Dart hasn't had any reservations about continuing to look for him. So he's got 7, 4, and 6 targets his last 3 weeks. And like you said, against Chicago should be a huge scoring game. So, maybe he pushes double-digit targets this week for the first time this year and continues his touchdown hot streak here and gets in. So from a tight end, there's a lot worse players, that you could be looking towards if you're stuck at tight end this week, right? If you had Tucker Kraft and you have a league where a lot of guys own 2 tight ends and Theo Johnson is out there, I would definitely be comfortable looking his way this week. All right, and the last guy we want to talk about here is Michael Penix Jr. So he had kind of a breakout game last week. Maybe it was more of a Drake London breakout, but we did see him throw multiple touchdowns on the goal line to London, and then he had another red zone touchdown to London. So overall, I'm not sure that he's going to be throwing 3 touchdowns every week just because it was all to London this week and not a lot else. It would have been kind of nice from his perspective if Pitts had one and Mooney had one maybe, because Mooney hasn't gotten going at all this year. Going into this week against Indy, they might be chasing points, and Bijan should be more involved in the passing game this week than he was last week. And so I do think, again, against a really good AFC opponent, this is somebody that I think could be good this week. And after showing a little bit of a breakout, somebody that I would maybe be confident rostering over the next month or so to see if he can really keep the momentum going.
Yeah, I liked this call a lot more before they ended up getting Sauce Gardner. So we'll see if he's, sticking on London. But I think London is just like, at least last week, playing at a level that you can just throw it up and he's just gonna dunk on you. So I would like to see Mooney get involved again. I don't really know what's going on with him, but one encouraging thing I noticed is watching the game was he ran a couple times and he didn't necessarily look fast, but if he starts scrambling just a little bit more, that's going to raise his floor because in this game, Indy's going to be mad and they're going to be scoring points coming off that loss last week. So again, he's going to have to throw the ball 35 plus times in this one. So especially in Superflex, I think this is a good call out.
Yeah, and we know he could run too. It's just one of those things where he's still kind of trying to protect himself from past injury.
It's like Cam Ward. Like we want to see you run a little bit more, man. Like
Yeah, it's okay to have 5 carries a game. Like, get out there and try and
Yeah.
pick your spots a little bit better. And that's why we love Drake May so much, because he is just elite at picking his spots on when to just go. It's like 1, 2, 3, go. With London, too, you got to remember he goes into the slot a lot more than you would expect from a 6'4" alpha wide receiver. So I think there's going to be a little bit of scheme to get him away from Sauce Gardner. So I do still think that the connection there could be pretty good this week. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're still here, hit that like, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one.